says Community Matters. I'm Jay Fidel, and the lady next to me, who was one of my oldest friends, that's because she's really old.
But I look good with the makeup,
Look
don't
good
I?
with the makeup, yeah. More makeup! Stephany Sofos, a real estate broker, appraiser, and diva. And knows a lot about the market. I mean, I think she breathes the market. You know, to understand a market, don't you agree, Stephany, that you have to feel it in your heart. It has to be sort of an intuitive thing where one person connects with the many, understand. I'll tell you a short story.
Okay.
So I was with Hawaii Public Radio for almost a decade, and we did these, fundraising shows from every 6 months. I was sitting there with a guy named James Peterson from Hawaiian Airlines, and Howard Dykes, and Michael Titterton. Okay, and we were raising money, and this is right on point. You'll see. And in the middle, of this raising money thing, like between the breaks is where you pitched. Titterton said, "This is going to be a $10,000 hour," which is a lot in those days. And I said, how could you say that? How do you know that? He said, because I understand the conversation among the four of us. And I know in my heart, I know how people react to that and how they may open or not open their pocketbooks based on the things that are said in the conversation. And I was amazed, but it turned out to be a really special hour. Everything clicked and he knew it. So he was like reading the crowd through the nether. He was understanding the community through the nether. An old radio man can do that, I guess.
Well, in my business, when you do rentals, I can tell whether I'm going to rent to someone within the first 5 seconds. Because you can tell by the way they look at you, how they shake their hand to you. When they drive up, what kind of car they have, how do they keep their car clean, how they're dressed. And I particularly, when you're meeting a landlord, you want to make sure that you're respectful. And when people try and be your friend, that's a no-no. And I had a tenant one time, and she said, "But we're friends." I said, no, we're not friends. I'm your landlord. We're friendly, but we're not friends. And so after a while, you do get to feel certain people and how things react. And you can feel the markets if the market is changing or if it's going up or down. But I also study markets. I study the New York market. I study LA. I study London, Japan.
Yes, but why?
Because Hawaii is a global market now. It's not just a little market anymore. Your investors are from all over the world. In fact, this particular run we've had for the last 4 or 5 years has been the most odd market I've ever been in. And I've been in it for 40 years.
Okay, now we're getting some real pay dirt here. Now, you guys, it's about time you started taking notes today. This is going to be good. An odd market.
Yeah, it's very odd.
Dites-moi, the odd market.
Because in the old times, you had waves of people coming in. So in the 60s, you had the Canadians. In the 70s, you had some Saudis. In the late 80s, you had all the Japanese. In the 90s, you had some Chinese. And in the 2000s, you had the Caucasians from the mainland. In the last 4 years, you have had everyone, every ethnic group, every country coming into Hawaii to buy. We're even getting Russians.
Yes.
Can you believe Russians in Hawaii?
I've seen Russian tour guides with Russian Cyrillic on the side of their vans. No kidding.
And they're bringing in cash, and they're buying very Tony, very high-priced properties, and they're paying $2, $3, $5, $6 million for these properties, and they don't live in them. They're there. They're land banking. And I've never seen this happen, which makes me very nervous.
We're going to talk about that, but first, why? Why has the last 4 years attracted this conglomeration of investors?
Well, in my opinion, it's because there's a global currency war going on. You saw the yuan in China devalue by 30%. You saw that in Cyprus, they had a haircut, and all the banks took out 30 to 50% of people's savings. You know that Greece is in bankruptcy. Brazil is in bankruptcy, Argentina is in bankruptcy, all of the pigs, Portugal, Ireland, they're all printing money, they're in dire straits. Japan is printing money now again. China, they're having major problems with manufacturing. So what's happening is that everybody's nervous. The whole world is nervous. Everybody's been printing money, they've been borrowing. All the countries, all the governments are overloaded. And if you have any money, if you have any wealth, you know that the only thing that you can do is put it in a hard asset. Hard asset is real estate or gold. Well, gold can be manipulated by the people in power. But real estate, you can touch it, feel it, work on it, paint it.
It's not nearly as volatile as the other things.
And even if you lose some of it, you still have a hard asset.
Yeah.
If the value drops 10 to 30%, you still have a hard asset. I mean, cash money, if it's paper money, it can be wiped out. You can reprint. You can go in and close the banks for a week, like Roosevelt did, and then reprint all the money, and all of a sudden you have a 30% less value. But real estate stays. And Hawaii's been always better historically than everybody else.
What do you mean better?
Well, in the Great Recession, when the world economies, when the financial markets collapsed, the mainland United States dropped anywhere from 20 to 50%. Nevada was down 50%. Arizona was down 60% in most areas. And in Hawaii, we dropped anywhere from 10 to 30%. So right there, we're a stronger market. And we're stronger because we have all these outside people coming in and stabilizing it.
Yeah. Yeah, but okay. So it's because, and I asked you earlier, why do you study all these places? And I guess you have to, because you have to see them as sources of foreign investment.
Well, and if one is trending one way, why is it? You start to look at that, and how is that going to affect the Hawaii market? Yeah. And it's pretty interesting. New York is a very, very interesting place because New York, they had all the new luxury condos, 63% were empty over the last 3 or 4 years.
That's
63% of these condos, which were purchased by Russian, Chinese, Japan.
Oh, you don't mean unsold. You mean sold but not occupied.
Not occupied. 63%.
That means they didn't need them, really. It was
land banking.
Land banking. Yeah.
Land banking.
Yeah.
And that's what's happening here. You're seeing a lot of foreign nationals buying very pricey homes, and particularly in the Kaka'ako area, but also in Hawaii Loa, on the golf courses, all the very high end, and they're empty.
Well, looking again for causes, for the reasons for this happening, what I think I hear you saying is we have a global disparity of wealth. We have a lot of people who couldn't afford to buy a shoelace, and then we have guys who can buy a home, an expensive home, a multi-million-dollar home, and not have to live there or make it productive at all. Because they have so much money, they buy homes hither and yon.
Right. I've seen investors, they're buying their 5th house here, or their 6th house. But it's basically about land banking. They're just trying to pull out money out of their stock market or their portfolios and put it into a hard asset.
Flight of capital.
Flight of capital. And it presents a situation where it becomes scary, because what do they see that we, as the average schmo, doesn't see? What are we missing?
What do they see in this market here in Hawaii?
Well, and what do they see globally that's going to happen? Is there going to be a global recession?
Well, let's talk about that for a minute. I don't know if you remember, but Robert Mitchum and Ali McGraw starred in one of the early television series called The Winds of War. And it was fictional, but it was kind of an examination of what was going on before World War II actually broke out. And these guys were globetrotters. He was in the Navy. She was, I don't know what she was, but they were running around Europe, and they saw a little indicia of a problem here and a problem there, and and you felt it building up. Winds of war, like a storm cloud on the horizon.
Yeah.
And ultimately, as the serial went forward, the war happened. And I can't help but making a comparison in my mind with what led up to, you know, the preliminaries to World War II and the kinds of things that are happening in the world now, today. Yes, you have economic disruption. You have huge volatility. You have a lot of people who are unhappy about a lot of things. You have people being displaced in the Middle East and now, you know, having trouble in Europe and Europe having trouble with them. You have great disparity of wealth, as I mentioned. So, yes, what do they know? These guys may know it better than we.
What do you feel? I know you're a very voracious reader. I know you watch everything too. What do you feel? Don't you feel that something is a little amiss right now?
I do.
Yeah.
I do, and you know, you can look at the rhetoric, you can look at the media or the social media, and you see only a veneer. What's really happening is what counts.
Yeah,
And it's hard, and you're intuitive. You have to be somewhat intuitive to figure it out.
Everybody tells me, they say, oh, you're so contrarian. Oh, you're such a Debbie Downer. Why are you always so negative? I'm not negative. I'm just very conservative. Look at me, in, you know, my little preppy shirt and all this. But, you know, explain to me, if the economy is so robust, why is homelessness growing in all the markets?
Exactly, Stephanie.
Why is it growing where you have so many? I have never seen the United States of America have so many homeless since, and I'm a history major, since the Great Depression. I mean, how, if we're doing so well in this economy, why do we have so many homeless? And not just here, but LA, New York, London, Russia, Greece, Italy.
Okay,
I mean,
it's rhetorical. It's a fabulous
really,
question. It's a fabulous setting. We're going to take a short break so everybody can think about that and, you know, sort of enjoy your own thoughts about it. And when we come back, Stephany and I are going to further explore why this is and how it affects us and our market. Okay, that's Stephany Sofos, real estate broker, appraiser, and of course, the diva of real estate in Hawaii. We'll be right back.
Aloha, this is Maria Mera, and I'm here to invite you to my bilingual show, Viva Hawaii on Think Tech Hawaii, every other Monday at 3 p.m. We're here to inform, motivate, and entertain you. Join us. Hola, soy María Mera y estoy aquí para invitaros a mi show bilingüe Viva Hawaii en Think Tech Hawaii cada 2 lunes a las 3 de la tarde. Estamos aquí para informaros, motivaros y entreteneros. Apuntaros.
Aloha, my name is Carl Campagna. I'm the host of Think Tech Hawaii's Education Movers, Shakers, and Reformers. You can see our show every Wednesday at noon at 12 p.m. on thinktechhawaii.com, as well as visiting YouTube and finding the link for the show there. The show is also aired on OC16. We look forward to seeing you on the show. We have many wonderful guests, including Joan Husted, Corey Rosenlee, where we talk about the very important issues of education for our keiki. We look forward to seeing you there. Mahalo.
Oh, doesn't she look good? That's a friend of mine.
Really? Okay.
I wanted to do another type of thing where she was like just unzipping her skirt, and she said that was too risque. So
you may have the idea that when I called Stephany Sofos a real estate diva, there was another reason for mentioning that, and it's the book, okay? And we're going to talk more about the book in a little while, you'll see. Just to say that it's more than just that she's a diva. She's an announced diva, a confirmed diva.
Well, at least in my own mind, I am.
In mine, too.
Thank you.
Okay, back to the thing about, so the homeless is like a canary in the coal mine. It's an indicator, right?
Yes.
And we have, in this state, we have a huge number. I'm not convinced we know all of them. It's like watching koi in a pond. How can you count them?
Well, you know, I do counts on my own because I watch all the markets. Again, if you're going to know the market, you have to know what sections. And I've looked at Waianae and Kaneohe and Kahala and Waikiki, of course. And my count says 15,000.
Yeah.
And I tell you, I was totally shocked one day. I was doing an appraisal inspection in Kahala, and I counted 5 cars along Kahala Elementary, people sitting in their cars. You knew they were homeless, eating their lunch, just sitting there because there was a toilet and the park is there. And I was just totally shocked. At 2 in the afternoon, these people were sitting there in their cars. And it's like, where do these people come from? A lot of them are Caucasian, a lot of them are Micronesian, and I'm not being racist.
A lot of them are Native Hawaiian.
A lot of them are Native Hawaiian, but the ones that are in, the Native Hawaiians stick to their own neighborhood.
Yeah.
So you see camps in the Waianae area, in the Kaneohe area, in the North Shore area. Those are more of your local people. Your people who are living on Diamond Head. Denby Fawcett did a whole article for Civil Beat.
Saw that, yeah.
And she said there were 40. My count is almost 100 of them. And I would say virtually about, out of that 100, 90 of them are mainland haole that have come off the boat or the plane, and they end up on the mountain because they've got a view and it's easy to walk into town.
I caught one fellow in the street one time, in my neighborhood where I live. I said, you know, what's happening? What's your life like? He said, oh, I like this very much. I came over from California, and it's not a bad avocation to be homeless. And I said, you know, what's going to happen to you in the end? He says, well, no, I'll hit 62. I'll take my Social Security. I'll be okay. I see this as a, you know, a relatively easy way to spend your life. And I'm happy with it. I'm not giving it up right now.
I talked to several of those type of people. They are in a lifestyle. They're in a lifestyle that they buy a one-way ticket here, and the weather's warm, people are friendly, and they can drink and do drugs and not have to go and do it and be accountable. Yeah. And they're doing that, and they're getting free food. The churches are feeding them. The ones I feel sorry for is the families. You know, they have a Family Promise, which is a
very good organization.
Yeah, I think it's a fabulous organization, and they help families, and they house these families until they can work and get enough money for their first and last month's rent. The community, the church community embraces them. They help the kids. I think it's wonderful. And
at best, we're treading water on this, Stephany. Yeah. At best.
Yeah, but the families are a small amount compared to the chronic homeless that are here. There's a big difference when people get down on their luck and they need help, and we all want to help those, but the chronics are really an issue.
So, I mean, so be a historian for a minute. You look back and you say, it was never like this since the 30s, since Roosevelt and all that. What has happened to make all these people, to disaffect all these people and to put them on the wrong side of the line, make them homeless, and set up a situation where they're not participating in the productivity of the economy in any way, and in fact, they're probably undermining, you know, the market. And so what I'm asking is, you know, why are there so many people homeless? We've got to make this examination in order to understand the future of the market, right?
Well, you know, I think that it's not just about affordable housing, which everybody says it is. I think that that it's a global situation, or it's a United States situation, in that there's not enough jobs. There's really not enough jobs. Whether we outsourced them to Mexico or whatever, there's not enough jobs for everyday people.
Let me add a point on that, though. You know, didn't we all know that as the country, as the world moved into more sophisticated technology, that manual jobs weren't going to be around anymore? And that if you wanted to stay productive in the workforce, you had to follow the technology. You had to train or be retrained, you know, in modern production technology, one kind or another, if you wanted to stay employed. Isn't that what has happened here in the last 20 years?
Yeah, yes, but also the business people did not help their employees.
That's true.
And they did not help them redefine their skills.
That's true.
I myself have redefined my skills over the last 40 years of being in the business. I started off as a property manager, and then I morphed into a broker, and then I morphed into an appraiser, and then I morphed into a consultant. And so you have to keep going up the steps in order to try and make income. But the way you make money, the way you get people and get them off the street, is you have to have the private sector have jobs. You cannot make enough government jobs to produce to hire all these people and get them housing.
No,
because
that
that's
doesn't
social.
work, and then there's fewer people left paying for the government.
Right.
And then it begins to
That's
collapse.
Right. That's right. So this is the problem, and Hawaii's going to experience this problem.
Yeah, if
Because
it isn't already.
Yeah, because as you keep increasing the minimum wage and saying, well, we have to have it at $15 an hour, well, that's great if you can get a job then. Because I can tell you, there's a lot of retailers who used to pay their people minimum wage plus commissions, or the restaurant people, minimum wage plus tips. And so they would be averaging $15 to $17 an hour. So now you're going to pay them $15 plus benefits. The average small business person is having problems. There are people like small
It goes out of business.
Yeah, I was at a small little ice cream shop that has gone out of business, and he used to have 3 people, 1 in the back, 2 in the front. The one in the back was getting ready the food stuff for the next day. The second one was scooping, and the third one was handling the money. Now the minimum wage went up, and he had to eliminate one of those people, so it's 1 in the back, and the scooper has to scoop, and then he has to go and get do the money. And so the lines go out for 8 or 12 or 20 minutes. So people stop coming because they don't want to have to wait. Fast food is fast food. And so what happens is that I've seen at least a dozen businesses go out of business because they can't.
Mom and pop type
Yeah.
businesses.
Yeah, because-
This is very tragic.
Right, because they cannot compete on the scale of economies that national and international retailers can do. Because they
but
can blend their
also
expenses.
their rent is high.
And the rent's
and
high.
going higher all
And-
the time. And they can't afford the rent, plus the employees, and continue to do business, and they don't.
And some of the legislators want to increase the GET tax. Well, now it's 5%. You keep raising that GET tax, that is, for every dollar you earn, that's 5 cents right off the top. Well, some people, their profit margin is less than 5%. That's why people end up being behind in their GETs, or getting tax liens, or going out of business.
So what I hear you, there's a track of causation here. We end the track with, there are too many homeless, but we begin the track with, the employment community, call it the employers, have not really retrained their people. They have not kept up with technological changes in the employment marketplace.
Right, and it's private
private
sector loss of jobs.
And laying it on the government is really not right, not appropriate. It's not logical.
But the government should give incentive to private sectors to get them going.
Agreed with that. And the government doesn't know how to do that, because
Yeah.
the government is all,
Have you met any government official that didn't like a tax that he couldn't enforce?
Sure. Well, it reminds me of Act 221, which was supposed to be an incentive for the tech industry. And, it was out of the bag with the Ben Cayetano administration. Linda Lingle made it into, well, she destroyed it.
Well, okay, that's good. Where we're going with this, okay.
Yeah. And so, that kind of incentive, and then it was radioactive, of course. Nothing like it has come back. There are so few incentives, the kind of incentives that create industries, that create, entrepreneurship and jobs, that encourage people to go into business. There are very few of those, if any, right now in Hawaii. So the result is there are no new mom and pops. Mom and pops is part of history here.
Well, and becoming more by the day.
Yeah.
History.
Yeah. The old folks get older, their kids don't want to be in that business, they go to the mainland, there's nobody to take over, they fold, they close it
Well,
up.
it even happens in my family. My niece, who was born and raised here, and I helped raise her, last year she moved to Austin, Texas. She and her husband and their 2 children, they just couldn't make it here. And he's a tech guy, he was making a big income, but to have 4 people, and she was a stay-at-home mom, and then she thought about, well, I'll go back to work, but the amount of money that she would earn, 50% would go to taxes because their wages go up, and the other 50% goes to daycare. And so she'd be working 8 hours, 9 hours, commuting, and so she wouldn't see her children for 10 hours, and then she wouldn't have the opportunity, and then they're tired, so she's not getting the attention helping the kids, she's not raising her children. So it was easier for them to move to the mainland, because what he made here is 60% more on the mainland in Texas.
Yeah.
and so they can have a lifestyle. It's very, people, the government people do not understand this. And, you know, we talk about the housing in Hawaii. And they say, well, you know, it's the style of Hawaii where everybody lives together and it's ohana and all the family come together. That's not true. When I was growing up here, when we hit 18, we were out the door, and all my friends were too. My parents and their parents, they didn't want people living their kids underneath their roof. But what happens now is it's so expensive to live. They need all of these paychecks to pay for the taxes, to pay the mortgage, to pay for the overall housing.
The whole multiple generations have to
Right.
chip in to
Yeah.
maintain one residence.
Right, and people say, oh, it's because it's so expensive and they can't afford their own house, and that's not the case. The case is everybody, yes it is, but more than anything, they can't go on their own, and the parents can't support that house that they have. So you have to have multiple checks to have. Paul Brubaker says, he's an economist, and he says, oh, you know, every time the economy goes up and the housing goes up, all the local people, we figure out a way to keep that going. We rise with the tide. But when you have an average house of $1 million, think about that, $1 million, that means you put 10% down, that's a $900,000 mortgage. That's a $5,000 or $6,000 a month mortgage, plus taxes, plus maintenance. You're talking about almost $8,000, $9,000, $10,000. What person per month? What average person can afford that? So that's why you have multiple families living there with the paychecks.
Yeah, and that's why ultimately you have homeless. People give up.
Yeah.
You know, when they can't afford it and there's foreclosure, or they can't afford it and they got to move out of a rental place. Where do you go from there? You're homeless.
Yeah, and then people talk about, the government said, well, we have to have a rental cap. Well, how can you have a rental cap if the landlord's costs are going exponentially up? So if you're at this cap and your costs are going up, then you're going to be in the red. And what's the alternative? Is to sell it and get out. So there's going to be a loss of, yeah, it's a loss of investment.
Yeah, and the market begins to deflate that
Right.
way. I mean, are you saying though that the base of all wealth in Hawaii is land, and that if you wanted to fix the problem, then you have to have the Great Mahele of 2016?
I think part of the problem is not so much, well, of course, you have so few owning so much. I mean, there's about, I think 5 entities own about 60%, and 12 entities own about 85%.
You know, really, Stephany, that's ridiculous.
Yes. And would it help us? Yeah, sure it would. But more than anything, it has to be done, if you're going to break that up, the government has to provide the adequate infrastructure to develop that. Because right now the city is renovating its sewer system, but they have stated point blank they are not going to increase capacity. So they're going to build another 200,000 housing for 200,000 people in Ho'opili and Kapolei,
Yeah.
but they're not going to increase sewer
That's
capacity.
also ridiculous.
Yeah, and are you aware, I think we're the only state in the union that every time it rains, our storm lines are hooked up to our sewer lines. So when the water comes into our storm drains and it backs
flushes
up,
out the sewer.
it backs up the sewer, so you have pollution everywhere. And why do we live here? We live here for clean water, because I like to swim every day. Clean water, clean air, clean land, and we're polluting ourselves into death.
Okay, so I think I got it now. That the reason there's so many homeless, or people on the edge, you know, nearing homeless and increasing number, is because there's something wrong in the land system, something wrong in the way that the cost of occupancy and the economy in general, which doesn't pay them enough or doesn't even allow them jobs.
Well, and also too that there's not enough private sector jobs to provide. You have what, 65% of your people, your local people work in government.
For the government, yeah.
Yeah, 65.
That's a recipe.
Yeah,
That's a recipe.
and that's a recipe for trouble.
Yeah.
And what happens when the when their retirement system breaks down.
Which may be happening, actually. It's in default now for
Right.
a long time.
Right.
For billions of dollars.
Yeah.
Okay, well, there's a bright side to this. I'm not sure where, but we're going to let the diva tell us, okay, right after this break. That's Stephany Sofos, Hawaii real estate broker, appraiser, and diva right here in the studio. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Donna Blanchard. I'm the host of Center Stage here on Think Tech Hawaii. Center Stage airs every Wednesday at 2 o'clock, and of course you can check out our archives on YouTube or on Think Tech Hawaii anytime you like. Why should you do that? Because this is an arts show that I believe is making a difference in lives. We talk with artists of various ilk. We talk with painters and writers, playwrights, novelists, poets, sculptors, dancers, you name it, directors, actors, of course. And we don't only talk about what people do, but we talk about how they do it. And my favorite part of the conversation, we talk about why they do it. And it's really common on this show to hear people say, wow, I didn't think about it that way. And it's very common to hear people afterwards who have seen the show say the same thing. And I hear all the time that people are inspired by the conversations that we have. So why don't you join us and be inspired too? That's Center Stage on Wednesdays at 2 o'clock. We'll see you Center Stage.
Okay, we're back. We're live with Stephany Sofos. We're talking about the diva here, the real estate diva of Hawaii. And the title of our show here on Community Matters is The Diva Tells All. That's great. We love that.
Okay, no real secrets.
So, okay, what I was getting at, we were getting at before is, so we have identified for this discussion some of the root causes of all the homelessness, which is the canary in the coal mine and, an indicator of some kind. But you said you were concerned before, and I want to know what you're concerned about going forward.
Well, the people who live, the residents of Hawaii, they still love real estate. 58%.
Still a real estate economy, isn't it?
Yeah, and 58% of all the residents own their homes, as opposed to 64% in the mainland United States. So everybody wants their piece of paradise. But what the government has to do is has to create incentives to create private business, whether it's tech. And I think tech's great because you can do remote training all over the world, and you can have your engineers and your developers everywhere and have it here in Hawaii. So I would like to see us really promote tech. I would like to see it give incentives to people to do it. And I really think that Hawaii could be, and Ben Cayetano had this dream of making Hawaii the medical Pacific headquarters.
I remember.
And I think that still could be something, because doctors would love to come here. Who wouldn't want to come here? If you could have a good job and you can have a nice house and you can drive a nice car and you're not in traffic for 3 hours, but you could do that, they will come. But that's the kind of building, the mantra of build it and they will come is not just about residential and building housing for rich people and poor people. It's also to create an incentive for people to come. So it all can be done simultaneously. And it wouldn't be that hard to do, but it would take vision. I mean, and people need to have, everybody seems to be so focused on what they do one year because they're getting elected the next year, and it's their job. And some of these legislators have been in government for re-elected 30 years.
Yeah, the term limits bill failed yesterday, by the way.
Well, I'm a big proponent of that, but I really think we should have limits. But I really think what we need is to have some vision. There doesn't seem to be anybody who has vision. And I think they're afraid because Hawaii is so conservative. They're afraid. What are you doing talking out of your turn? You're supposed, why are you such a loudmouth? Howly girl, it's like, it's because I dream of a better world. I dream of a better world.
Take a moment and talk about your book.
Well, my book, should I look at it this way? Here we are.
Yeah, that's good.
Here we are.
Yeah.
Are we over here?
Okay, well, we have a picture of the cover anyway. We can show the
there.
cover. There you go.
I wrote this book. It took me 4 years to write. Came out in 2012. And it was because I consider myself kind of a boring person because
I don't consider you a boring, whatever you want to say, Stephany.
well, I do, but I'm kind of analytical, but everybody told me I had great stories, so I said, okay, I'm going to write the stories. And it took me 4 years to write. It came out in 2012. We talked about that back then, and I've been very fortunate, and I've sold about, I think I'm over 5,000 books that have been sold, which is pretty good because, you know, an average book only sells 450 books. And it was self-published on Amazon. You can get it on Amazon.
It's on Amazon now. You can get it on Amazon.
And I'm coming out with a sequel. This was Untold Stories of a Real Estate Diva.
Okay.
And,
it's just like Louis Nizer, My Life in Court, you know, with the little, you know, vignettes of experiences you've had and cases you've seen and deals.
And the next one's going to be Confessions to a Real Estate Diva. And I've got some great stories. Everybody has a story. Every person I've ever met has a great story about whether they've been homeless.
We know that from sitting here, we know that.
I have a story about a young man who was homeless for 6 years, and then some Marine helped him while he was homeless and protected him from all the other people. And then he went back and got his GED. Is that it, a GED?
Yeah.
And then he went and got his college, and now he's a vice president of a commercial real estate company.
Really?
I know. There's another story about one of the old-time real estate brokers, and she couldn't get a job when she started in the 70s, and no one would hire her. And then Hugh Menifee, who was one of the old-time developers, said,
former Coast Guard, like me.
Yeah. And he said, well, lady, he said, are you willing to wear your white bikini and stand outside, and if anybody comes in because they're watching you in that white bikini holding a sign, I'll give you part of the commission. And she went, okay. And she had this sexy little body, and she went out there in high heels and went like this, and here's my sign. And I think she made 10 or 12 sales in a week. And he goes, okay, I'll hire you. You're going to get a commission. So there's great stories, and so I'm going to talk about those in this next one.
Yeah, well, that's great. That's great. They're historical stories because, as you said before, Hawaii is a real estate economy, and these stories, you know, are about real estate. They're about, you know, one of the core business activities, and I'm sure there are a million stories.
And everything in Hawaii revolves around real estate.
Yeah.
And the funny thing, there's a chapter in my book is everybody's an expert, and anybody. I mean, I'll be sitting there and they don't know who I am, and these people will come up to me and say, oh yeah, my cousin's gonna buy one, and I mean, they're like bus drivers, and no disrespect to bus drivers or janitors, and I was at a dinner party the other night, and this fellow who is a food truck operator, has no education. He got his real estate license, and he's just sold 2 properties. And he goes, yeah, I really love real estate. I'm in it. I'm going to be an expert. And he has no clue who I am. I go, oh, I'm happy for you. I said, do you know about errors and omissions?
But you know, he probably had that same kind of intuition, because some of it is experience, some of it is training, and some of it is intuition. It's like, you know, in the first 5 seconds whether you're going to have a deal or not from this person who presents to you.
Right.
And maybe that guy, you know, aside from his experience, however limited, and his training, however limited, maybe he had that kind of intuition too. He could tell. And so my question to you is, how do you tell?
Well, I don't know about him. I just think he's lucky because he's a pretty boy.
Are you lucky too?
No, I think, well, we all have a certain amount of luck in business. I mean, a lot of it is being at the right place at the right time.
Yeah, not true.
I mean, if people tell you that's not true, they're silly.
Yeah.
But I do think that as you get to know the business, you start to get a good feel of it. I mean, I can tell whether, I can walk into a house when I'm on an open house, and I can tell whether the broker is good or not just by how they present themselves. But that's it with everybody. You can tell that. I think it's age maybe. When you're young, you don't know poop. But when you get older, you have a certain sense of how people are going to act and react. And so you kind of feed on that.
Well, you know what it sounds like? The old story, you know, real estate is not about land. It's about relationships.
But isn't everything?
Yes,
Everything.
that same, and the same idea applies everything.
It does. And you really do have to present yourself. And it isn't about dress. I mean, a lot of people, dress will get you in the door. I've always noticed that. I'm more conservative.
Dress, you mean clothing?
Clothing. People, I mean, you see the real estate, other divas, and they've got the Saint $500, $600 dresses
We've
and the
all
high
seen
heel.
them, it always amazes me.
Yeah, and the $1,500 bag.
Yeah.
But they're going to get, the one who gets the deal is the one who is, of course, attractive personality, attractive, but also knows what they're talking about.
Right.
And the ones who talk out of their side, they never do it that well.
Yeah. So, as an investor or a seller,
I've got a deal for you.
I know you do. But I mean, you know, I'm looking for somebody to help me, somebody who will listen to me, not profile me, somebody who will be sincerely interested in my welfare, the welfare of the deal, and somebody who is friendly but not my friend.
That's me.
You're my friend. So give us 1 minute now on where you think it's all going to go. You know, from the point of view of history and your experience, how many decades already, and what you know now.
I think that right now we're in a bubble, and when it pops, we don't know. It could go along until after the election, but once the election comes, there will be changes, whether it's Hillary or Trump or someone else. I think that you're going to see some of the market deflate. How much? I don't think it will be that great here, but on the mainland, maybe a lot. I think that the global currency wars are going to continue. I think that this bubble will pop, and it will be triggered by something. Excuse me, and it will be done by either natural disaster or human. And that's what concerns me, because I always concerned with governments, because when things go bad economically, the first thing they like to do is take you to war. And
Change the subject.
Change the subject, you know, make sure that you're not focused on it. And I'm for one, am tired of war. I'm tired of we've been in the war in Afghanistan and Iraq, and I don't want to go to Korea. I'm just tired of war. I think that we should focus on rebuilding our infrastructure.
Ooh, I heard you say that.
Yeah,
Let's talk about infrastructure. I have one last question. I cannot resist one last question.
It's got to be about the rail.
We haven't actually discussed this, but it's like 1 minute from you on the effect of climate change. You know, and I'm operating on the assumption that climate change is not something that happens at one moment in time. It happens over time, and since it's all about people and psychology, as soon as people realize that climate change is really coming, you know, that's when the market has an effect.
Well, it's already affected us here in Hawaii, because the Micronesians are being shipped to Hawaii and Guam. It's already been announced that the federal government is moving 10,000 more over here this year and 10,000 to Guam, because they have become literally environmental refugees, because their islands and their atolls are sinking with global warming. And that's all public information. Anybody can go and find that out. So it's already affecting Hawaii, and it's going to cost a lot of money, and it's going to cause a lot of problems for us and the world. I mean, in Japan, they're already building underground walls around their shoreline, because in case of tsunamis, they'll hit that big
They have the same
rock.
kind of project in Manhattan.
Yeah.
Is Hawaii doing anything? It's a rhetorical question.
Nothing. Well, Hawaii's protected a lot because we're the only state in the United States that have both fringe reefs and a barrier reef. Kaneohe is all a barrier reef. And so a lot of it will be protected if there is a tsunami, but places like Waianae in the North Shore, which doesn't have any type of reefs, are going to get killed, as you saw in the last couple of weeks where these houses were getting devastated.
Yeah, I know some of the people.
Yeah.
Okay, that's Stephany Sofos, Hawaii real estate broker, appraiser, and diva. We've seen her, we've talked to her, we've explored her concerns and her analysis of what's going on in the market. We looked at her book. We are so happy to have her here. And we know that she has told us all, or at least most of all.
You've got to leave something
Thank
for the
you,
next
Stephany.
time. Thank
Next
you.
time.
Thank you.
Take care.